Everyone, please have a seat. Okay, good morning, welcome. Luis, on behalf of Director Massimo and the General Manager Giovanni Lo Storto, it's my pleasure to welcome you here for this event, which is quite an interesting event for many reasons, for us, for the topic, for the group of people that we had the chance to invite here. And before starting the presentation of everything, I will want to thank the people here on the table. On my left, Maximo, Ibarra, and Wind, the company that is supporting us in this event, as well as Dnsee, Zoorate, Principia, SGR, that have been working with us in inviting Jonah Berger here for his talk and to organize everything. So, in my capacity of Dean, it's my pleasure to say that Jonah is in Italy, in a business school, an Italian business school for the first time. So we are very pleased to have him here for his presentation on word of mouth, viral marketing, and social influence and trends. His book has been considered one of the most influential most influential ones in the publishing sector within this topic. And one of the key issues that I want to share with you is why Jonah has decided to come here. Well, we invited him, of course. We are in a great city, but in the reality, beyond the topic, which is quite important for us in this moment, for a business school that is involved in a new competitive arena, which is more global, more pervaded by new technologies and information and communication technologies, MOOCs, social media, and stuff like that. But the real point is that our school is and this event is perfectly in line with our key strategic pillars. Our key strategic pillars talk about these three main areas. So we have 5 areas of excellence. We are engaged in a process of full-speed internationalization, and we are going to create some solid partnership with international company and international business schools. Just a quick word about the areas of excellence that we are developing now. These are more or less what we are doing now. Innovation, entrepreneurship, technologies, markets and consumer behavior, corporate strategy, restructuring and growth, finance for growth, and creative industries. These are the 5 main areas in which the school is involved now and is developing research as well as programs. And the event, the topic of Jonah Berger's speech, is quite a hot topic for us because it's dealing with the new technologies and the way in which technologies are affecting consumer behavior. And this topic is mainly related to this kind of area of research. And I have to say that we are extremely pleased to have here at Lewis in the business school one of the I would say one of the most active group in the research group in this area, with Michele, Costabile, Matteo Dnsee, and some other professors and researchers here that are working hard on this kind of topic, and Jonah has some collaborations with them. But at the same time, this kind of topic is also strongly related to innovation and entrepreneurship because it's a sort of influential topic to inspire new projects, new startups, new companies that are becoming more and more relevant within the business environment. Wind is strongly committed to a process of innovating business models within the telecommunication industry with its very, I would say, effective group of people on Wind Digital, and they are doing very, very good in developing new ideas and projects. But at the same time, we invited startups to be on this table discussing with us, and we have a venture capital fund, Principia, that is backing up the process of this kind of activity. So this speech is perfectly in line with the research areas in which we want to be protagonists in the future. We already have some good and interesting things to say. Second, the full-speed internationalization process. Many of you probably already know that we are well engaged in the EQUIS accreditation process in international rankings stuff. But the big issue of our school is we are working hard in terms of internationalizing our faculty body. We are actively in the process of recruiting international professors and scholars that are working with us in developing these topics and this research. And Jonah is here also because he knows that we have a lot of good interactions and people to work with. That's why we are developing these kind of activities. But at the same time, the internationalization of the student body has increased a lot in the recent years, and we are planning operations abroad. I don't want to spend too many words on this before giving the floor to Jonah. And finally, that's why you are here, because you are, for us, most of you are members of a broad community of corporate partners. As a school, we are developing solid partnerships with top business schools in the world, like Fudan School of Management, IESM, Lyon, IPADE, SEC. These are key players in the global business education. We also have one top name from Wharton that is here for a month every year for 3 years a month, who is Dan Levinthal, that you probably know. Maybe Jonah could join the group in the future. But at the same time, we are developing research-driven corporate programs for some partners. Here in the room, we have some of them. I don't want to mention them because it's their role to say. And we are developing workshops and events that should be unique on key and hot topics like today. And we are going to invite for these events our corporate partners. So you are here because we believe that you may be part of this group. And of course, for our corporate partners, we want to offer unique opportunities at the career service and placement area, because we have a huge talent pool to offer to our corporate partners. Okay. My introduction is finished, but I want to say some words about Jonah. Jonah is an associate professor of marketing at Wharton School in the University of Pennsylvania. He has been largely published in many influential top scholarly journals in the marketing and business sector, like the Journal of Marketing Research, like Journal of Consumer Behavior, Journal of Marketing, so psychology science, marketing science, so the top journal in the scholarly world. But at the same time, he has published a lot of articles and he has a lot of interviews in newspapers like New York Times, Wall Street Journals. He has published something in Harvard Business Review. So also trying to disseminate the content that he has developed with his colleagues within the social media and the impact of social media within the marketing area. Jonah has also a strong background and experience in working with corporations. I name a list of them. Google, we were discussing about Google before entering the room. Microsoft, General Mills, Unilever, Estée Lauder, General Motors, Facebook. So a lot of companies that are on the edge on this kind of topic, and of course is asked to give advices on the social media and the reason why we are here. And the reason why we are here is that Jonah, with some colleagues, has developed research explaining what makes things popular. Not necessarily traditional advertising, not necessarily traditional facts, but he has been working on different things. So I was impressed reading very quickly the book about the study on the New York Times articles and understanding the way through which these articles become influential in the word of mouth. So the work of Jonah and the book that he's going to present is dealing with this. Why things become popular and become a content to be word of being a part of the word of mouth process. So I don't want to use more time than needed. So I really thank Jonah Berger to be here, being here, and having accepted to be here. I also want to thank the team that has worked hard to organize the event today. I want to mention Stefania Mauri, Stefania Angelini, and the other Mariella Pugliesi that I see her there. So thank you for having organized everything here. And thank you, Jonah. The floor is yours. Afterwards, we will have a panel that will be moderated and chaired by Michele Costabile, who is our professor of marketing, and is leading this group of researchers on technologies and consumer behavior, I would say. So, Jonah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Left. Okay. Good. Yeah. Perfecto. All right. Good morning, and thank you very much for having me. I am going to talk today in English because my English is much, much better than my Italian. I spent about 3 weeks taking a course in Italian in Perugia a few years ago, and I was just about to become a professor at the Wharton School, and everyone else in the class had different jobs, and they asked, oh, what do you do, what do you do? And I said that I was a professor, and they were amazed that I could be a professor, yet I could be so bad at Italian. I basically remember 3, maybe 4 words, 5 possibly, so my Italian is not so good. I can say poco poco, which is how much Italian I know, io vorrei, dove, and a few other things. So not so good on the Italian. But buongiorno, and thank you for having me. So everyone in the room here today has an idea. It might be a product, it might be a service, it might be a new product that you want to get out there. And there are many people that don't know about it. You know about it, you love it, you've invested a lot of time and effort and energy in helping it grow. But one question is how you can get it from you to all these other people. How you can take something that you have worked on and you have enjoyed and you've put your heart and soul and effort into and help it grow effectively. And what we're going to talk about today is the power of word of mouth to do that. The power of person-to-person communication. Not advertising. We'll talk about how person-to-person communication can be over 10 times as effective. But to make it effective, we have to understand why it works. The underlying psychology, the underlying behavioral science. And so I want to start today with what seems like a very simple question. Here are 3 products or brands that I think everyone is probably quite familiar with, or at least a couple of them. I think everyone knows Disney World, the self-described place where dreams come true. You may not know Honey Nut Cheerios. In the US, it's a breakfast cereal, so something people eat for breakfast. And scrubbing bubbles, do they have scrubbing bubbles here? No, it's a bathroom cleaner. You basically spray it in the tub, and it cleans the tub for you. If you had to guess, and this is your chance to participate, if you had to guess which of these 3 products you think gets the most word of mouth, is it Disney World, is it Cheerios, or is it scrubbing bubbles? Okay, I'm going to ask everybody to vote. So I heard some for scrubbing bubbles. So how many for bubbles? Okay, about maybe half. How many for Disney? I heard somebody say Disney. For Disney? Okay, another third or so. And Cheerios? Okay, maybe 5, 10%. I want to point out 2 things from this exercise. First, when I asked this question, the room was pretty quiet. A little bit of a silence. And when I looked around at some of your faces, some of you looked scared. Like you had no idea how to answer this question. What do you mean, which of these three things gets more word of mouth? I have no idea. And indeed, unless you work for Disney, or you work for Cheerios, or you work for Procter & Gamble that makes scrubbing bubbles, the answer to this question isn't very important. Because you don't work for one of these companies, you don't necessarily care. But the why is very important. If we don't understand why people talk about one of these more than another, it's going to be very hard to get other people to talk about our products and our ideas. Which brings me to the second point. So I think Bubbles had the most votes. Yes, Bubbles? How many? About half the room, 2/3 of the room. Close, but no. Disney World? Also close, but no. The answer is Cheerios, the one that the fewest of us guessed. And what I think that points out is that our intuition, our mental model about what drives word of mouth might be incorrect. We might be spending a lot of time and money and effort and energy in the wrong places. We have to understand why people talk and share in the first place. So that's a very long-winded introduction to a title slide, but as was nicely mentioned, I'm Jonah Berger. I'm a marketing professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. And what I'll do in the next 30 to 40 minutes is give you a brief tour of some of the highlights of my recent New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller, Contagious, Why Things Catch On. Everything I'll talk about today is based on rigorous academic science, and I'm very excited to be here with some of my very nice marketing colleagues who've also done a great amount of work in the area of word of mouth. It's really an exciting area where lots of new science is being discovered. But what I won't do today is I won't put up a table with lots of statistics in it. Because I found if you put up a table with lots of numbers, everyone does one thing in particular. They tend to look at their phone. So I'm going to do my best to keep you off your phones. I'm going to tell stories, because stories are the currency of conversation. But if you want to know more about how we reached our conclusions, it's all in the book, and also all the research is up at jonahberger.com. And I know some of you already tweeted about this event, but if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at J1Berger on Twitter. And also, I know there are a number of companies in the room. I've done all sorts of work recently with the likes of Google, Samsung, Coca-Cola, Unilever, General Mills, Microsoft. Happy to talk about how these ideas apply to your company or organization. So feel free to ask questions at the end. So to jump right in, and I know that someone from McKinsey is here. So in case you haven't realized it already, word of mouth is much more impactful than traditional advertising. By some estimates, $1 spent on word of mouth goes 10 times as far as $1 spent on traditional advertising. I teach at the Wharton School. Sometimes when professors say something, students maybe take notes. But when a major consulting firm says it, then everybody take notes. They believe what the consulting firm says. So if McKinsey said it, it must be true. But word of mouth is much more impactful. Any ideas why? Why is word of mouth? There are two key reasons. Why is word of mouth so much more impactful than traditional advertising? Trust. What do you mean by trust? Somebody who said trust. You don't trust ads? No? So I point this out because I think it's easy to see it when it's someone else's ad. When it's our own ad, we think that everyone will trust it. In the US, there's an ad that's going on right now with a famous football player, not calcio football, but American football. Famous quarterback, his name is Joe Montana. But imagine a famous soccer star, famous football star here was doing a commercial. And he's in a commercial for these shoes called Skechers. And the shoes are called shape-ups. And in case, I don't know if they have shape-ups here, but they're shoes that tone your behind. The idea is you wear these shoes, you walk around in them, and you will get a toned behind. Imagine you saw a famous football player in an ad for shoes that he says he wears to tone his behind. What would you think? I remember thinking, wow, things must be really bad in his house. Very bad. He must owe somebody a lot of money. He's got a gambling debt. He's got some child support payments. Something is wrong because there's no way this famous person, famous guy, uses shoes that tone his behind. We think that every time we see ads. People tune out, they don't listen, they tune away, they react against the message. They don't believe it. Because ads always say that this is the best, most exciting product ever. They say, we have the best service. They say this movie is the most fantastic movie ever. This restaurant is the best restaurant ever. You never see an ad that says, we have the 6th best service. In fact, all our competitors have much, much better service. Let me give you their phone numbers. You should call them first, but if they're too busy, then you can call us. No, the ads always say, we are the best, we are wonderful, we are fantastic. But because of that, the consumer doesn't know whether to believe the ad or not. But we can trust our friends. We know our friends will tell it to us straight. We know they'll say this was great or this was terrible, so we can believe what they have to say. So the first benefit is trust. The second benefit is a little more nuanced. That is the targeting benefit of word of mouth. How do we find the best new customers that might like our product or like our service? It's tough, right? We use demographic information. If we're going after women who are 35 to 45, we try to advertise on television shows that go after women that are like that. But it's hard to find the right people. Well, word of mouth does that work for us. A great example of this happened to me just a couple of years ago. I got a free book in the mail. And publishers often send academics books in the mail with the hopes that we'll assign them to our students and they'll sell more copies in the process. But this time they sent me 2 copies of the exact same book. Second copy was the same as the first, so why the second copy? Well, they said, hey, Professor Berger, we think you'll like this book, but we think you'll also know someone else who will like this book. Pass the second copy on to them. And that's the first simple hack I'm going to share with you this morning. Because people don't share word of mouth with just anyone. They go through their social network, just like a searchlight, to find the person or people that'll find that information most interesting. If you find a great website for baby clothes, for example, you're not going to tell a friend of yours that doesn't have a child. You go through your network and you find the person or people that will find that information most relevant. The consumer does the targeting for the company. And so if you can turn customers into advocates, you can get them to spread the word, they'll do the targeting for you. They'll bring in customers that have over 20% higher customer lifetime value. They're better customers because they did the targeting work for you. So hopefully I've convinced you of the value of word of mouth. Now the question is, how do we get it? And often when we think about getting word of mouth, we think about big online technologies like Facebook, like Twitter, like blogs, like online reviews. If you had to guess, what percent of all word of mouth is online? From 100% all the way down to 0, what percent of word of mouth, all word of mouth is on blogs, on online reviews, on Twitter, on Facebook, on all these different digital technologies? Of all word of mouth, what percent? You had to guess. I heard someone say 70, 20, 50, 50. The number is 7. 7% of all word of mouth is online. And some of you might be very surprised to hear that, right? You say, well, but there's always newspaper articles about new digital technologies and how they're changing communication. They are changing communication. But the problem is no one's going to write a newspaper article that says, do you know what? People talk face-to-face, just like they have for thousands of years. It's not going to make the front page of the newspaper. So people talk about technologies because they're exciting. And these technologies are changing the way people communicate. But most of communication is still one person to one person, face-to-face. Right? When you got here today, you talked to your neighbor. This morning, you talked over breakfast. You'll talk to your colleagues over lunch. Most communication is face-to-face. But the bigger problem with focusing so much on online, on technology, is we forgot about psychology. Because if we don't understand why people share, the technology doesn't matter. You can have 1 million Facebook friends, 1 million followers on Twitter. Many companies end up disappointed. They say, we have millions of followers. Why do only 100 people share our message? Because you have to understand why people share the message. Having a lot of friends and followers is not enough. You have to understand the underlying behavioral science, why people talk and share in the first place. And sometimes when you look at content, you say, well, why do things go viral? People say, well, it must be luck. It must be chance why things go viral, why one video or one piece of content gets shared. We were getting ready this morning, and someone was looking at their phone, and someone had sent them a funny picture that everyone was looking at. Why did that picture get shared? Well, one answer is that it's luck. It's just chance. But that's wrong. There's actually a science behind why people talk and share. We've spent the last 10 years studying why. We've looked at thousands of pieces of online content, 6 months of newspaper articles from the New York Times, over 7,000 articles, everything from world news to style to politics, doing rich textual analysis to understand why some content made the most emailed list and some didn't. We've looked at tens of thousands of brands and millions of purchases across the United States. And again, we see it's not random, it's not chance, and it's not luck. There's a science behind why people talk and share. In fact, when we looked at it, again and again, we see the same 6 steps driving people to pass things on. The same 6 factors. So these are the 6 that I will talk about today. Each of these is a psychological driver of social transmission. Each of these is a key reason why people pass things on. Now, you'll notice I talk about social currency, I'll talk about triggers, emotion, public, practical value, and stories. STEPS is spelled incorrectly. It has 2 Ps. I was not clever enough to come up with an acronym that actually made a word. I spent a while on it. I couldn't come up with anything better. But now there are about 200,000 copies in print in about 35 languages around the world. So I can't change it. We're stuck with it. If you can come up with a better acronym, I'll buy you a drink later. But for the moment, we are stuck with STEPS. So what I'll do today is I'll talk about social currency. I'll talk about triggers. I'll briefly mention emotion if we have time. I'll talk about public, and I'll wrap up by talking about stories. And again, each of these is a driver to help us understand how to craft contagious content, how to build messages and products and ideas that are more likely to spread from person to person. And I know that viral is very exciting. Many of you would say, we'd like to make a viral video. That's our goal, to make a video that gets 10 million views. And if you can get a video that gets 10 million views, congratulations, pat on the back, that's good for you. But that's actually not the goal. Because a video that gets 10 million views is very popular, and then it often disappears. And no one ever talks about it again. What does the Fox say? Was that popular here also? What does the Fox say a few months ago? Very, very popular in the United States. Hundreds of millions of views. And then they disappeared, never to be heard from again. You don't want 10 million views. You want 10 to 20% new customers. You want to figure out how each person who learns about the brand, who uses a service, who comes to a store, is more likely to tell just one more person. If you could get each customer to tell one more person, you would likely double your business. And that's the goal, to turn those customers into advocates. So let me start by telling a story to talk about social currency. And this is a story of a hot dog restaurant in New York City. So next time you're in New York, you can go there. So imagine you're walking around New York City. You've been walking around all day. You've been sightseeing. Your stomach is rumbling. You're hungry. You have to get a bite to eat. When you notice a big hot dog-shaped sign, a sausage-shaped sign, out in front of a restaurant with the words "Eat Me" written on it in what looked like mustard. You say, wow, I haven't had a hot dog in a while. I'll check this place out. You walk down a flight of stairs, just like these, into a restaurant called Criff Dogs. Now, if you like hot dogs, you will be in heaven. Criff Dogs has every hot dog you can imagine. From a good morning hot dog with bacon, eggs, and cheese. A little rough on the stomach in the morning, but interesting nonetheless. A hot dog with green onion and pineapple, and a traditional New York-style water dog with just ketchup and just mustard. You're sitting there, you're munching on your hot dog, when you notice something unusual in the corner of the room. It almost looks like a phone booth, like one of those things that Clark Kent might jump into to change into Superman. So just for fun, slide open the door and walk inside. Pretty cramped in there. There's not much space. It's a phone booth after all. But on the wall, you'll see something that many of you probably have not seen in 15 to 20 years. A rotary dial phone. One of those phones you have to stick your finger into and you go around in a circle to dial the number. So just for fun, why not? Stick your finger in the number 3, go around in a circle, and hold the receiver up to your ear. If you listen, the phone will actually ring. It will go ring, ring, and then someone will pick up the other line, and they'll ask you whether you have a reservation. A reservation? You're in a phone booth inside of a hot dog restaurant. What could you possibly have a reservation for? But if you're lucky, and they happen to have space, or a friend of yours happened to make a reservation, the back of that phone booth will open, and you'll be led into a secret bar called Please Don't Tell. Now, Please Don't Tell has violated a number of traditional laws of marketing. There's no sign on the street. There's no sign inside the restaurant. They've done everything they can to make themselves difficult to find. Yet every day they're full. They've never advertised. 3 p.m., phone lines open up. By 3:30, all the seats are gone. I found out about this place. I started calling. It took me 2 weeks to get into this place. And there are dozens of bars. It's New York City, just like Rome. Dozens of bars around the streets. So why is this one so popular? Well, they did something interesting. They made themselves a secret. And let me tell you a little secret about secrets. Think about the last time someone told you something, and they told you not to tell anybody else. What's the first thing you then did with that information? You told everybody, right? Because having access to information that not everyone else knows makes you look smart and makes you look in the know. It gives you what I'll call social currency. Just like the car people drive and the clothes they wear, the things they say and the things they share affect how other people see them. So one way to get people talking about you is to make them look good. Because the better you make them look, the more they'll talk about you. So let's spend a couple minutes talking about social currency. To do that, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. Her name is Carla, and this is her car. She drives a minivan. And I want to see how much you can guess about Carla based solely on the car that she drives. I'm not going to give you any other information. If you had to guess, for example, how old might you guess that she is? You had to guess. 35. How many people would say between 35 and 45? Okay, everyone? Does she have kids? Yes. Do they play sports? Yes. What sport do they play? In the US, they would say soccer, football, right? Everybody would say, oh, she drives a minivan, she must be a soccer mom. How do you know that? You don't. But you make inferences based on how she drives, the car that she drives. Same thing with the clothes that people wear, right? I've been told I have a young face. I'm not actually as young as I used to be, but I do have a young face. So I always wear a sport coat when I give a presentation to show that I'm professional. But if I walked up here wearing shorts and a t-shirt, would you be as likely to take me as seriously? Probably not. My content would be equally useful, but you'd make inferences about me based on how I was dressed. And coming to Italy, I know I have to dress extra snazzy, because Italians are dressed much better than Americans. I'm always worried, by the way, that I'll wear the shirt that I have in my photo, and today I'm wearing the shirt that I have in my photo. So I apologize. I have more than one shirt, but I brought the wrong one on this trip, evidently, because that was the photo that I sent. So just like what people drive and what people wear, what they talk about is also a signal of identity. Some people talk about sport. All the time they talk about the newest thing in sport because it's a signal of who they are. Other people talk about restaurants. This restaurant opened. Other people talk about fashion. It's a signal or a communication of identity. So how can companies take advantage of this? Well, in the book I talk about 4 ways. Here I'll talk about 2. The first is to make people feel like insiders. To make people feel smart and in the know. Like they're special, like they're not like everybody else. Please Don't Tell did a great job of this, right? Many people, if you found out about a bar that's hidden in a hot dog restaurant, you would write the name down because it makes you look smart to know about this. Beyoncé, last year, released a new album, no marketing, no advertising. She just put a picture up online on Instagram that noted that she had a new album out. And millions of people shared that message. Why? Because it made them look smart and in the know. It made them look like they had the information before everybody else. Unless you think that it's only exciting products can do this, let me tell you about a McDonald's sandwich that did exactly this. I don't know if they have it in Italy, but it's called the McRib. They have it in the United States. It's a great story. So about a decade ago, McDonald's ran out of chicken. Essentially, Chicken McNuggets were so popular that they couldn't keep them in stock. They had to come out with a new menu option to take some of the demand away from chicken. They came out with a new sandwich called the McRib. Now, the McRib is a little bit of a misnomer. There's not much rib meat on the McRib sandwich. It's more partially separated, pig pieces and stomach meat, but there's enough sauce on top that no one really notices the difference. The sandwich comes out, and it does okay, but it doesn't do great. So then McDonald's does something interesting. They take it off the market. And then they release it in certain cities at certain times of year. So sometimes it'll be in New York, sometimes it'll be in Washington, D.C., sometimes it'll be in San Francisco, but never all the places and never all at once. And suddenly, people go nuts for the McRib sandwich. People will tweet, "Oh my God, the McRib is in town, we have to go." Okay. Somebody put up a website called the McRib Locator, which is a map of the United States with pinpricks in it for sightings of a sandwich at McDonald's. Not a Loch Ness Monster, not a UFO, but a sandwich that doesn't even have rib meat on it. Why did people get so excited? Because McDonald's made them feel special, made them feel smart and in the know. And so I think the key question here is, how can you make your customers or your clients feel like they have information that not everybody else has? That they're not equal to everybody else, that they're a cut above, that they have status, that they are special and not like everyone else. Fashion brands have done a great job of this. Clubs do a great job of this, right? Make people feel special. Another way is to find the inner remarkability. And this one is very powerful. Some companies think, well, certain products are naturally remarkable. A hidden bar, that's naturally remarkable. A Tesla car or a Lamborghini, that's naturally remarkable, very exciting. What if you sell something that's not so remarkable? What if you sell soap or water or socks? How could you get people to talk about those things that are not naturally remarkable? Well, let me give you an example of how a company got over 200 million views for videos about one of the least exciting products ever, a blender. How many people found that at least a little bit remarkable? Be honest, just at least a little bit remarkable. I saw someone going the entire time. This video has over 10 million views. The set of videos has over 200 million. Blender sales go up over 700% after these videos come out. But that's not the most remarkable thing about this for me. I interviewed these guys in the book. They made this set of videos for a $50 marketing budget. Not very expensive, $50. They bought the lab coat. That's actually the CEO of the company. You laughed at him. He's not an actor. CEO of the company. But the most remarkable thing is that they did this for one of the least exciting products ever. They did this for a product that many of us will never talk about. We never think about. A blender. Many of you will go home, if you have a blender at home, and look at the blender on your kitchen counter and go, "You do that, little blender?" We don't think about blenders. But they got people to think and talk about blenders because they found the inner remarkability. It's not that certain products are naturally remarkable and others are doomed to fail. Any product can be made remarkable if you show people rather than tell people. And I'll come back to this idea again and again and again today. Too often in marketing, we sell. We tell people, we say, we have the best features. We have the best service. We think if we just tell people enough times, they'll believe us. Will It Blend showed people. They didn't tell them, they showed them how powerful the blender was. And I'll come back to this at the end when I talk about stories. Showing rather than telling. a much more powerful way to convince consumers of the end message. Okay. Yes. Yes, and they blend everything. They blend crowbars, they blend Bic lighters, they blend oars, they blend golf balls. They have a series. It's amazing. You can watch them. They blend everything you can think of. The new phone comes out. They blend the new phone. They blend the Samsung versus the iPhone and see which blends faster. But they've created a channel, in a sense, where people tune in to figure out what's going to happen next, which is amazingly powerful. Even B2B companies can do this. Sometimes people hear a presentation like this and say, very fun. If you're a consumer good, you can do this. But I'm a B2B company. I went recently to a conference called South by Southwest. This is a product that 3M makes. 3M does not make the most exciting products. This is a product that cools servers. So you put them in your server, you have a server farm. This keeps the servers cool. It also cools off race cars. They want to show people how powerful it is. So they show you can dip your phone in this liquid, and your phone will have no problem. They leave a computer monitor in the liquid to show you that it doesn't damage the electronics. Again, showing people rather than telling people. 90% of new business in B2B markets comes from existing business. Same tools, just different ways to apply them. So equally powerful. Let me talk next about triggers. So we talked about the S, social currency. Next, we'll talk about triggers. And to do that, I want to use a video, a song, that was quite famous a few years ago. Did they have this song here in Italy, Rebecca Black's Friday? How many people have heard Rebecca Black's song Friday? Okay, some have. For those who haven't, let me play you a quick clip of the song. So some of you may be sitting there going, why did he play that song? It's terrible. Why? Why did first Britney Spears, then this? Americans, they're ruining pop music. Yes, Americans are ruining pop music. But why did I play you this song? This song was made by a 16-year-old girl named Rebecca Black. Her parents paid $4,000 to a company called Arc Music Factory to come up with a hit song for her. They came up with this song called Friday. It's an overproduced number about those big teenage dilemmas, like waking up in the morning, going to school, and figuring out whether to sit in the front seat or the back seat of your friend's car. Which seat should I take? Very, very hefty, important stuff. So this song comes out, and people hate it. If you look on YouTube, over 75% of the thumbs are thumbs down, which is impressive. Some people have called this song the worst song ever. If you could truly make the worst song ever, that would be impressive. That would be the worst song. Wow, that would be amazing. Yet it has over 300 million views. 300 million. I'm not missing a zero there. 300 million. So why? If everybody hates this song, why is it so popular? Well, I worked a little bit with some data from Google. Google has a great feature. You can type in any search string, any product, any idea, any word, and look at the volume of searches for that string over time. So here, I typed in the phrase Rebecca Black, and I look at the volume of searches over time. What do you see? Well, you see a spike, and then it goes down. And then another spike, and then it goes down. And then another spike, and then it goes down. Interesting. If you look closer, the spikes aren't random. They're every 7 days. And if you look even closer, you'll notice that it's every Friday, which is the same name as Rebecca Black's song. Now, this song is equally good or bad, depending on your preference, every day of the week. Good or bad on Monday, it's good or bad on Tuesday, it's good or bad on Wednesday. If you wonder what academics do when we close our office doors, this is what we do. We're listening to the song to make sure that it doesn't change. Equally good or bad every day of the week. But Friday rolls around, and Friday provides a ready reminder, what psychologists would call a trigger, to make people think about and talk about and share the message. Because if something is top of mind, it's much more likely to be tip of tongue. It's not just about how much people like something, it's whether they're thinking about it or not in the first place. As marketers, we often test our ads. We say, how much do people like this ad? How much do people like this ad? And we assume if people like the ad more, it will drive them to purchase. But the problem is if they never think about the ad, they're never going to buy. There may be a restaurant in town that you've been meaning to go to. And there are thousands of restaurants. But if you don't think about the restaurant, you will never go there. There's a great study some psychologists did a number of years ago. They played music in the grocery store. Some days they played French music, and some days they played German music. And what they found is when they played French music, sales of French wine went up. And when they played German music, sales of German wine and beer went up. And it's not because the music changed what people liked. It reminded them of the product in the first place. It triggered them to think about that product. So let's spend a couple minutes talking about triggers. This is the word of mouth for Cheerios by time of day. So you have midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m. When do people talk about Cheerios? Breakfast. When they are eating Cheerios. One reason people talk about a product is when they use that product. When they finish using it, they're much more likely to talk about it. Notice how it shifted to the right on the weekend? Why? People wake up later. Exactly right. This is not rocket science. People, when they think about a product, when they use a product, they talk about a product. This is why Cheerios gets more word of mouth than Disney World. Disney World is a really engaging experience. When people go to Disney World, it's an amazing place. They take lots of photos, they go with the kids. It's very, very exciting, very emotional. But people don't go to Disney World very often. They go once every few years, right? Maybe they have kids, maybe they get married there, or they're just weird. Those are the three reasons that people go to Disney World. Cheerios is very mundane, very boring, a little bit like a blender. But people eat breakfast once a day, 365 days a year. And even if they don't eat Cheerios, they wheel their grocery cart through the aisle, they see the brand, they think about it, and they're more likely to talk about it. Now, some of you may be saying, okay, well, this is great if I sell a product that people use once a day. But what if I sell a product that people don't use as often? How do I get people to think about it? Well, there are other triggers as well. So at least in the United States, maybe here as well, but if someone said peanut butter and blank, what word or idea might come to mind? In the US, people would say jelly. Or if you said rum and, people might say Coke. Right? At least in the United States, people would say Coke. Advertisers have taken advantage of this idea. Michelob had a slogan a few years ago that said, weekends are made for Michelob. They wanted people to think about Michelob, the beer, every time the weekend rolls around. Corona, the beer Corona, has done the same thing with the beach. Corona owns the beach, right? Every time you're on a beach vacation, I challenge you to go on a beach vacation and never think about Corona. It's impossible. You're lying on the beach, you have your sunscreen on, you're reading your book or your newspaper, and suddenly Corona comes to mind. You don't even like beer, you don't even drink Corona, but they come to mind. How do they do that? Well, they own the beach. That's the real estate in their mind that they own. They found what I would call their peanut butter. Just like peanut butter reminds people of jelly, it's almost like jelly should pay peanut butter a kickback every time peanut butter advertises. Because if peanut butter advertises, jelly doesn't have to. If rum advertises, Coke doesn't have to. Because every time people see one, they think about the other. And so what I would say here is, what is your peanut butter? What is the peanut butter to your jelly? What is the rum to your Coke? Because you can spend a lot of time and money and effort reminding people to buy your product, or you can link that product to a trigger, a cue in the environment. Kit Kat did a great job of this. A few years ago, sales were down by about 30%. They had to bring the brand back to life. They had to find something new to bring attention to the brand. They came out with a very simple slogan. Kit Kat and coffee, a break's best friend. Having a coffee break, have a Kit Kat, think about coffee, think about Kit Kat, coffee and Kit Kat and coffee, best friends forever. If you're Kit Kat, why is coffee a really good trigger to link yourself to? You're going to pick something, why coffee? Consume daily, it's frequent. if you're going to pick something, link yourself to something frequent rather than infrequent. If you're Rebecca Black, if you're that girl trying to come up with a song, you could come up with different songs. You could come up with a song about Friday, or you could come up with a song about Leap Day, right? Or a holiday that comes around once a year. You want to pick something that comes up more frequently rather than less frequently. Michelob, that slogan, weekends are made for Michelob, was originally holidays are made for Michelob. But they moved it to the weekend because the weekend is more frequent. More frequent, more top of mind, more tip of tongue. Okay, that was triggers. Next, I'll talk about emotion. And actually, in the interest of time, where are we on time? Don't want to...
Yes.
Good? Yes. What does yes mean?
Up to 15 minutes.
How much time is left?
Or 15 minutes more. Or
15 minutes. Okay, good. I'll talk about emotion. I'll skip public, and then I'll wrap up by talking about stories. Let me cut to the chase. Well, I'll tell you this story. So I'm an avid bicyclist, not a motorcyclist, but a bicyclist. I often bike around. And one winter, a few years ago, I was biking around the suburbs when I saw this really cute dog running around in circles in a parking lot. Very cute dog. It was in a park in an area near my home. I saw this cute dog. I said, oh, it's such a cute dog. I love dogs. And then I noticed it didn't have a collar on. I said, oh, someone must have lost their dog. So I put the brakes on my bike. I walk over to the dog, and I think I'll find a tag or something. I'll call the phone number. Someone will pick up the dog. There's no tag on the dog. It has sores all over its body, and its ribs are sucked in. Someone has left this dog in the park to die. Now, at the time, I couldn't have a dog in my apartment. Didn't allow dogs, but I wanted to help this dog, so I called up the local animal shelter. I said, hi, I have this dog. Can you help? And they said, yes, we can come pick up the dog, but we're pretty full at the moment. We might have to kill the dog. I'm not going to let you kill this dog. I just found this dog. So with the help of my friend, we nursed it back to health. We gave it its shots, but we had to find somebody to adopt the dog. So I sent an email out to all my colleagues saying, free dog. I have a dog. It has all its shots. It's ready to go. It's free. Just come pick up this dog. You can have it. Now, good news, somebody picked up the dog, but it wasn't someone I emailed or someone they forwarded the message to. It was a third degree of separation. Someone got the email, forwarded to someone else, forwarded to someone else. Why did so many people forward that email? And would they have been as likely to forward that email if I had another email about something free? If I said, hey, free couch. I have a free couch. It has all of its shots. It's ready to go. Just come pick it up. Probably not, right? People would share the dog email, but they wouldn't share the couch email. Why? The reason, very simply, is emotion. When we care, we share. The more we care about something, we're much more likely to pass it on. The more it involves us, the more it evokes our emotions, the more likely we are to share it. Now, you might say, well, people share positive things, things they're excited about, and they don't share negative things, things they're unexcited about, like Dell help. But actually, when people are angry, they share. So why? What about certain emotions make people share? Well, we did an analysis of the New York Times, of all their articles, looking at what made things viral. What we found, more emotional content, more emotionality, more likely to be shared, about 20% more likely to make the most emailed list. Sadness, when people are sad, that decreases sharing. More sadness, less sharing. But if you look at other negative emotions like anger or anxiety, they actually increase sharing. More anger, more sharing. More anxiety, more sharing. And so a question is why? If it was just that negative decrease sharing or negative increase sharing, they should all move the same way. But some negative decrease sharing and some negative increase sharing. What's the difference between, say, sadness and anger? What's the difference between what you do when you're sad versus what you do when you're angry? Energy? When you're angry, what do you want to do? You take an action. When you're sad, you don't want to do very much. When you're angry, when your team loses, you want to throw something at the television. With me, it's the airlines. The airlines always lose my bag. They're always late. They always bump me off a flight. They make me very angry. I want to yell at someone. When you're sad, you don't want to do very much. You want to curl up in a ball. You want to eat your favorite food. You want to watch your favorite movie. You want to stay inside. And so emotions differ not only in positive, things like excitement, humor, inspiration, contentment, and negative, anger, anxiety, sadness, but also a different dimension, whether they are high arousal or activating, or low arousal or deactivating. And what our research finds is that any high arousal emotion, anything up here, is more likely to be shared. Anything down here is not going to be shared. And this helps us explain. You might say, well, funny things. Funny things get shared. YouTube, funny videos. Funny makes people share. But then you look at angry political rants, and you say in the newspaper, angry messages get shared. They're actually the same thing. It's not just emotion, it's physiological arousal. When our heart beats faster, when our pulse is going, we're ready to take an action, to do something, and any high arousal emotion can get people to share. And so if we think about it, it's not enough to make people feel positive. Many marketers think, just positive is enough. It's not enough. We need to make people feel positive, but high arousal positive. We need to surprise them, delight them. On the negative side, if we're doing social media monitoring, seeing if consumers are upset, we need to be particularly worried about angry consumers or anxious consumers. They're much more likely to share their message. It's much more likely to go viral than a sad consumer. That's very briefly on emotion. Let me wrap up by talking about stories. I won't talk about public. Public is all about imitation. If you can see what others are doing, it's easier to imitate, but I'll let you read about that in the book. I'll talk about practical value briefly, and then I'll wrap up by talking about stories. Just to give you one example of practical value. So imagine you sell a product for 20 and just swap the dollar sign for euros, so a 20 euro product, and you could discount the product. You say, we offer a discount that will motivate people to take action. You could offer $5 or 5 euros off. What would that be in percentage terms? So rather than just the amount off, you could offer a percent discount. What is 5 off 20%? 25. I know I've been tricky so far. You may be a little worried about answering the questions. It's 25. It is. The math is right. These are economically the same. Are they the same, though, to the consumer? No. People are much more likely to take this deal and talk about the deal if it's 25% off. It's the same amount of money. At the end, it costs 15 either way, but the consumer sees this as a better deal. If it's 25, then it's 5 off. Now, you might say, maybe percentages are just better. Percent discounts are more likely to drive people to take action. That's not the case. So if you take $2,000, a $2,000 product or 2,000 euro product, 500 off would again be the same as 25% off. But there, 500 is more likely to take people to take action. It's something I call the rule of 100. That number isn't just a number. It depends on how that number is framed by the information. Again, it's not just economics, it's psychology. We have to understand the human behavior behind this, how we frame those numbers drive them to take action. And I talk about this in the practical value chapter. Let me just wrap up by talking about stories. And I've been talking about stories all along, but I want to talk about a particular type of story. So imagine you're at a party. You're at a party this evening, this weekend, and someone walks up to you, someone you don't know, and they say, did you know, my newfound friend, that the restaurant Subway has 5 sandwiches under 5 grams of fat? What would you do if someone walked up to you at a party, someone you didn't know, and said, did you know that this restaurant has 5 sandwiches under 5 grams of fat? Someone walked up to you at a party. You would probably say, that's very interesting. I left my drink right over there. I'll be back. You stay here. I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. And then that person would never see you again. Because no one wants to be friends with someone that talks like a walking advertisement. No one wants to be friends with someone that just reiterates what they see on television. But people are happy to share stories. In the US, there's a story about this guy named Jared. I don't know if you have him here as well. He lost 180 pounds by eating Subway sandwiches. 180 pounds is something in the neighborhood of 90 kilos by eating Subway sandwiches. He was way overweight in college. He picked his courses based on which ones had big seats rather than which ones were useful for his education. His roommate at the time said, Jared, you're way overweight. You have to lose some weight. So he goes on a Subway diet. Subway sandwiches for lunch, Subway sandwiches for dinner, each day for months on end. 6-inch for lunch, foot-long for dinner, eventually loses 180 pounds by eating Subway sandwiches. It's a remarkable story. I told you just a very quick version of it. But notice what you learned about the Subway brand while I was telling that story. What did you learn about their offerings? Well, you learned that they have healthy sandwiches. You learned they have not just one healthy sandwich, but a few healthy sandwiches. In fact, so many that you could eat there for months on end and never get bored of them. In fact, everything on the left side of the screen is actually hidden inside that story. It's not just a story. It's a vessel or a carrier of information. Something I call a Trojan horse story. Does everyone remember the story of the Trojan horse? We're in the land of the Trojan horse. Everyone remembers, yes? Greeks versus Trojans. Nobody can win the war. They build this wooden horse. The Trojans drag it into the city. They think the war is over. The Greeks crawl out from inside, and they win the war. Good stories are like Trojan horses. They carry something inside. If you have kids, and you tell your kids, don't lie. Lying is a bad idea. Don't lie. Your kids will say, okay, Mom and Dad, I won't lie. And then next week, they cheerfully go back to doing whatever they were doing before. They forget. They're like employees that way. Kids, they forget the message. But if you tell them a story, if you tell them the story of the boy who cried wolf, for example, which is all about not lying, they'll stay tuned for the end of that story because they want to find out what happened to the boy. But along the way, that message comes along for the ride. The message that lying is a bad idea is part of the story. It's not just a story, it's a vessel or carrier of information. Think back to that blender that I showed you that blended the iPhone. Amazing story, right? Amazing, but it's not just interesting. At the end of the day, if I said this blender is very blank, and I asked you to fill in the blank, how would you fill in that blank? This is a very blank blender. It's very powerful, strong, tough. That blender costs around 250, 300 euro. It's a business-to-business blender. It's in your local Jamba Juice, your local smoothie shop. It can tear through anything. They want to show people how powerful it is. They don't just tell people. They build a story or a vessel that shows people. Let me give you one more example of this, a last example. It's called panda cheese. Now, it is not cheese made from panda milk. That would be very remarkable. I would love to see someone try to milk a panda bear. You would have to run very quickly and wear a lot of padding. It would be a dangerous, dangerous job. It's an Egyptian company. Their brand is Panda, and they make cheese. And I want you to watch a few of their ads. And I'll narrate because it's in subtitles. So I'll let you watch a few of their ads. Can I make you a cheese sandwich? No, I'm not hungry. Never say no to Panda. Good morning, good morning. I got you Panda cheese for breakfast. No thanks, I don't feel well. Never say no to Panda. Daddy, why don't we get some Panda cheese? Enough, that's too much already. Never say no to Panda. And last but not least, Daddy, why don't we get some Panda? Get one. Get one more. Never say no to Panda. So I just want to wrap up. Today we talked about the 6 key steps to boosting word of mouth. Sometimes word of mouth might seem like luck. It might seem like chance. Why people talk about one thing or they talk about another. But it's not luck and it's not chance. There's a science behind why people share. 6 key factors that cause people to pass on all sorts of information, all sorts of products, all sorts of news, online and offline. We talked about social currency. When people feel smart and in the know, they're more likely to share something. So how can you make your consumers feel smart and in the know? Like they have access to information that not everyone else has. Triggers. If it's top of mind, it's tip of tongue. How can you remind people using the environment? How can you link your product or idea to some trigger in the environment so every time they see that thing, they're more likely to think about you? Every time they see that peanut butter, they think of the jelly. Every time they think of rum, they think of Coke. Emotion. When we care, we share. The deeper the emotional connection is to a brand, to a product, to an experience, the more likely people are going to be to talk about it. The more connected they are, same with employees. The more emotionally connected employees are, the more likely they're going to be to stay with the company. Deepen that emotional connection. Public, easy to see, easy to imitate. Right? If you can see what other people are doing, you can imitate it. Practical value, useful information. We briefly talked about the rule of 100. And finally, stories. Notice I've been talking about stories the entire time. I've been telling stories. Think about what you remember. Notice tomorrow and the next day and the next day. What you remember from this talk, I hope you enjoyed it, but notice what you remember. You'll remember the stories. People don't tell their kids, when your kids are going to bed, you don't tell your kids bedtime facts. Tell your kids bedtime stories. And the reason is that stories are that currency of communication. People tell stories as a way of communicating information. As marketers, we think we need to sell. We say, okay, buy my product. And if someone doesn't buy it yet, we get a little closer. We say, no, buy my product. Then if they don't buy it yet, we get a little closer. And we think if we just shake them hard enough, they'll buy our product. We need to stop selling and start storytelling. How can we build a message that carries our brand along for the ride? Panda cheese, very funny. Right? Many of you laughed, very funny. But it's not just funny. I challenge you to tell someone else about Panda cheese and not mention a particular word. And that word is Panda, which is exactly the brand that they want you to remember. You can't talk about that ad without mentioning the word Panda. It's not just a story. It's a vessel or carrier of information. It's a Trojan horse. Sometimes we see viral and we say, make something viral. Very funny, very viral, get a lot of attention. But if it doesn't help the brand, it's not going to be beneficial. Other times companies say, we have to make a message that sells the product. Very valuable, but unlikely to be shared. You need to do both. You need to think about valuable virality. How can we build a message that has that candy shell that people want to share, but inside the brand or the benefit comes along for the ride? It's a Trojan horse that carries the message. One last thing from me. I saw many of you taking notes. I hope you enjoyed the content and found it useful. Those 6 key steps are key. But in terms of applying these insights, I know you hear a lot of useful comments today. 2 key next steps to think about how to apply the insights. First, what is your message? What is the thing or things that you want people to talk about? It's not enough. Some companies say now, digital. We need to be on digital. We need to be on social. Those are good things. But what is the message that you're hoping people will share? Not just that they'll talk about you, what are you hoping that they'll say? What attribute are you hoping that they'll talk about? And then think about how you can apply the steps around those ideas. You don't need to do all 6 steps at once. Pick off one at a time. Social currency, how can you make people feel smart and in the know? We actually came out with a special version of the book. It has a black cover instead of an orange cover. Each one is signed and individually numbered from 1 to 1,000. We sold them for $100 each. And we sold them very quickly because people were excited about a limited edition version. Made them feel smart and in the know. Same with triggers, same with emotion, and so on. And in case it helps, if it's useful, on my website, there's a free resource, a free workbook to help you apply these ideas. It's called the Crafting Contagious Workbook. It'll give you some questions to think through each of these principles. I know for some of you, psychology is something you know a lot and understand, and so this will be easy for you. For some of you, it might be a little harder. The workbook will help you think about how to apply these ideas. Because again, it's not random, it's not luck, and it's not chance. There's a science behind why people share things. Both why things go viral, but also why one consumer tells another consumer a message. If you understand that science, you can craft contagious content, and you can get your products and ideas to catch on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonah, and thank you everybody for being here. And I hope that the second part of this today conference, let's say, will be very interesting for all of you, and to do in order to be successful in that. We asked to three people with completely different profile to present their experience. The first one will be Maximo Ibarra. He's the CEO of Wind, part of the Fimbelgon Group, and he has an extensive as well as a heterogeneous business experience. But at the end, he married the mobile telcos, and we hope he loves our students too, being a field professor at Lewis. And Maximo will present his experience. And the second one will be Marco Massarotto, that is a digital entrepreneur and a city explorer and taste hunter in his self-definition, self-presentation. Anyway, he is the co-founder of Agacure, now part of the Dnsee group, that is one of the leading Italian companies in digital marketing services. And Marco is here both for his very, very solid and successful experience in creating communities and making people share contents and story, and also because he's a wise businessman. He's also an author of many books on social network and digital marketing. So we hope, we are pretty sure he will help us in, theorize his practical experience. And last but not least, let me say, not least, but just youngest is Matteo Hertel. Matteo is a very young entrepreneur. He's a co-founder and CEO at Zoorate, that is a fast-growing company that is born to manage the market of contagious dynamics. They are not biologists, but they are social entrepreneurs working in the customer feedback business in the social commerce perspective. So they work on the source, let me say, on the creek of the epidemic rivers. So that experience, his experience should be helpful to share with you too. So please, Maximo, let's start with your presentation. We will have a 10-15 minutes presentation. Can I use it? Of course, or if you want, we have the same.
No, I think I can use it.
Okay.
Just important thing that it has to work. Now it's fine. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Jonah, for your presentation. I think really, really impressive. And I learned that probably we have to, in our point of sales of Wind, we need probably to implement, to design a phone booth just in order to have something, let me say, interesting to tell to our customers. But apart from jokes, I was listening to you carefully, and when I read your book, I just found a lot of very interesting things that somehow we applied. Of course, I'm not saying that we have been applying the 7 steps, but let me say, in our little experience, I think that we did something that is quite useful to share with you. What I'm trying to do today. I have some charts that can be helpful during this presentation. And I know that most of you are working in the telco context. And probably, I hope, most probably, you have heard about something that we decided to launch as a new concept in the market that is called a real minute, Minuto Vero. I don't know if you have heard about it. Probably our competitors, yes. I don't know if we people, yes, but can you raise your hand if you have heard about this Minuto Vero? Yes, I think so. Only 10 people.
Yes,
yes.
please.
Say yes, please, because otherwise I feel really disappointed. I think that you are shy. That's why you are not raising your hand. But in any case, I would like to start saying that there is this case study about Minuto Vero, because you know that telecommunications is mainly about technologies. It's technologies, digital, as you said, the digital space, what can we do in terms of social networks, virality. But in the end, there is always something about consumers. There is always something about people. And you mentioned it quite well because it is psychology, but it's about behaviors, attitude, and it's always important to put in the context what customers do. For the simple reason that they do what they feel, what they see, what they hear, what they listen, and you cannot avoid excluding this in your thoughts when you're doing something into the marketplace. So to make this story short, we, as Wind, in the company, we decided to do something a little bit different. And you know that one of the challenges is how can we differentiate our company, our brand? How can we differentiate our brand and make it remarkable when compared to the other brands like Telecom Italia, Vodafone? How can we differentiate it? Is there anything that we can do in order to be considered unique, different, relevant? I think that relevance is one of the most important things. So we started from the very high level, saying, okay, we want to be different, but not just for the sake of being different. We want to be genuine. We want to be a well-reputed company. We want to be real. So that's why we started with, let me say, our values. In 2009, 2010, we decided to go on TV. Now we are going to cut our budgets. Thanks to, let me say, your speech, I think it's going to be. But you are right. And we decided to be a company that is closer to you. This is exactly what we said. Now we are going to be closer to you. At that time, at the very beginning, it seemed to be like a normal statement. Closer to you, what does it mean? Nothing. So it was really nothing at that moment. It was 2009, 2010. But then we said, okay, we are transparent, clear, and simple. What does it mean? We knew at the time that it was something not relevant for the customer because it's just a promise. And we consider also this promise very important because once you make a promise, you have to maintain it. Otherwise, you are lost, completely lost in the market. So we started by this. And then we made an exercise trying to understand, okay, what do we want to communicate? So we wanted to communicate, we want to be, let me say, not, let me say, a company that makes people laugh, but we want to be a company that can communicate sympathy, empathy. We want to be problem solvers. We want to be really helpful for you, dear customer. We want to have a good customer approach, but not being the best, but probably by having the best approach in serving customers. And then here we had, okay, we want to be like this. So let's now go to 2012. And in 2012, we decided to do also another exercise, which was, okay, if we are saying this to customers, we have to be what we say. So then we started this very, sometimes boring, but we did in a totally different way, trying to introduce some values in the company. So if we want to treat customers in a way, we need to be exactly that way. So if we want to be transparent and we want to communicate transparency, we have to be transparent inside the company. So this is, let me say, a long journey that we started in 2012 that is still ongoing. But just to make, again, this story short, we focus on these values to make it happen, fast ambition. This is exactly the way the employee of Wind has to be in order to serve customers in a transparent way. But now we have to have something solid, something that people can touch. Customers can, let me say, rely on you if you can offer something really material. So then we said, okay, fine, let's go and do something relevant. So we are back now to 2012 and 2013, where we decided to introduce this fantastic concept of Minuto Vero. The Minuto Vero is nothing specific in terms of technology. It's not a technology. Minuto Vero is not rocket science. It's something very basic. It's not a price, or in the end, cannot be considered a discount. It's probably a principle of transparency that is embedded in the way you serve customers through your pricing and through your offers. The Minuto Vero means that all the bundles we have that are including minutes have real minutes. In Italian, it probably is even more convincing than in English. But at the same time, I think that in English, real minute sounds good. Minuto Vero is like, I'm so real, I'm so, let me say, transparent, that every time you use me, you are doing something real, original, genuine. On the other way around, it means that all the others are not doing the same. But we are not mentioning our competitors. We were not mentioning them. We are saying, look, we are real. So indirectly, all the others were not real. Then we had, let me say, we received a lot of claims. We were sued by this. Some competitors decide to say, you cannot do that, you cannot say that, you cannot communicate this. And we say, why? Am I, let me say, doing any comparative advertising campaign? Not at all. So I'm doing something different. I'm simply saying what I am. I'm so transparent that the minute you use is per second billing. And this was something that we had in our offer from the very beginning, from 2004, from 2005. So our minutes were real minutes. All the other minutes you can find in the market are not real, are unreal. Then we decided to, okay, you have to understand that, and you need to get this concept in a very clever way. So we did not have to explain this in a massive way, because it was so nice, the concept of being real, that we also understood at that time, and also this time, and that's why at the beginning I was saying that you have to put customers in the context. People are looking for transparency. There is a lot of literature about, let me say, brands, and people are looking into the consumer mass market industry. People are looking for real relationship. You don't have to take me around. You cannot, let me say, do things that are not in favor of your transparency. You cannot, let me say, damage the reputation. I need, let me say, to trust you. In order to trust you, I need to get something that is real. So the per second billing, you pay for effective seconds, all your costs are the same, so you are not being treated in a different way. And then we decided to show it, and we, of course, had an extensive campaign, but the one that worked better was, let me say, on the web, where you have a kind of counter, so you can, let me say, check, okay, this is not what you can get with Win, and this is, let me say, the way you can measure your minutes and seconds if you try another operator. If you try another operator, then your seconds are going to be heavier because you are going to spend more. In the end, the nominal price, the faced price, is exactly the same, but the weight of your price is, let me say, more transparent. So you are going to pay less with Win than you are going to pay more with the other players. So we did a lot of things. We did a lot of things. It was, let me say, 2013 in particular, end of 2012 and 2013. So we based all our advertising campaign more on this concept of being real rather than on communicating the price. Of course, price is still relevant. And you have to be very, again, smart in communicating price, as Jonah said. It's not, let me say, 42% discount or 35% discount, but it has to be something that customers can understand in a very few seconds. So we did all these jokes on the web, all these interesting ways of touching what you are really offering in terms of being material and solid. And we also did the same on the billboard campaign. So we changed a little bit the concept by saying, look, it's no more anymore about price. It's not anymore about price, because we were really hurrying behind a concept of communicating something different, because this market is so crowded, made by 4 competitors in a 150% penetration market. So is there anything that we can do in a different way that is at the same time consistent with your transparency and at the same time is consistent with the way your employees act and behave every day in their lives? Yes, so we did this. And for the first time, the price was not the protagonist. For the first time, something different was the protagonist, the value. And again, in the society, in Italian society in particular, in 2013 and 14, so today, people are, let me say, more attracted by something that is not necessarily the most convenient price, but probably the most convenient relationship in terms of trustworthiness. Okay, we did a lot of stuff that now I'm going to cut because we can do less in terms of advertising. But again, it was really really powerful, very interesting. But what happened, let me say, after a few months? After a few months, our competitors decided to imitate us, which is fine. But at the same time, we have a very big value, because when you start introducing in the market bundles with real minutes, it means that your customer base still have unreal minutes. So we are addressing in this moment the customer base of our competitors and not necessarily the new subscriptions. So there's still, let me say, a lot of room in order to be successful. Then, of course, it's important to understand when you do something like this, to measure if this activity, if this campaign, if this offer has been or not successful. It's important to measure, because in the end, it's just a matter of facts. It's not only, let me say, a statement, it's not only a promise, it's not only that you are overshooting, saying that you will do this, this, and this, because in the end, you are spending a lot of budget in terms of communicating this. But we have had a lot of very good results, remarkable results, I would say. The most important one is that thanks to this concept that became viral, one of the things that impressed me is that if you today say real, of course, if you say real minute, you tend to link this real minute to wind. The second thing is that if you say real, there are people linking real to wind. So it's like, let me say, the triggered concept of associating to, in the top of mind, real to win to our brand. So this was probably the biggest success in this campaign. And the market share improved a lot. I don't want to, let me say, spend too much on this, because I know there are some competition here. This will last only 5 seconds, so you will have this, let me say, impressed in your mindset. Fine, it improved a lot, in particular in the last 2 years, and at the same time, the customer satisfaction is the full engine of this is still very high, because in the end, if you satisfy your customers, then your performance will be that one, also in, let me say, in the next 18 months. So it's important, let me say, to consider these elements. If you ask me, Michele,
And competitors.
I know, yeah. No, but let me say, has not been designed and done just in order to show, because competition knows this very well. So it's not, let me say, a new thing. And also competitors know that they are very strong, let me say, in some other aspects. I'm just only mentioning the one that we believe is really consistent with our approach to the market. But the important thing is that if you ask me, what are the steps, let me say, of Jonah in, let me say, in this case study? I think all of them. Because there is, let me say, there is a storyline. It's not, let me say, very well known, the storyline, but it's a storyline. In the end, it's a storyline inside the company. Very strong, very powerful. We are 7,000 employees. And this story in the 7,000 employees is extremely powerful. Is this about emotions? Yes, is this about emotions? But at the same time, it's about doing something that makes you feel smarter. People now feel smart. Why you feel smart? Because you are using real minutes. You are not using unreal minutes. So I'm looking smarter than you, because I'm doing something that, say, in terms of legitimacy, is even more important than using unreal minutes. Why do I have to use unreal minutes when there is an opportunity to use real minutes? This, let me say, opportunity of associating, what I mentioned before, associating the real to win. This was another important step. Doing something, let me say, public, show the advantage. We were able to show this advantage on measuring these seconds on you and on competition. But what I consider remarkable, and fortunately it was, let me say, probably the best thing, is that now we have the property on this, let me say, real stuff. So this being transparency and this being transparent, has been really delivered. So the consistency of, I'm telling you that I'm a transparent company, and I'm also showing you and letting you, let me say, touch, allowing you touching that you are transparent. These two things probably are the best in this consistency story. And the consistency story has been successful, as I have shown you. Of course, we are doing, let me say, other stuff, not so successful as this. But this one, I think, is probably the one that is summarizing and probably embedding all these steps in a more, let me say, significant way. Thanks very much.
Thank you. We will have some room for question and answer at the end of the presentation. And now Marco Massarotto.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michele, for a very interesting morning, and thank you, Jonah, for your amazing presentation and stories. There's so much I think we can discuss about this. I collected some Italian viral cases, let's say, which might be interesting also for you to see, and which you probably know, but or maybe don't know, and we can look at them, and I think they can be a trigger for discussion somehow. And I also tried to identify for each cases what is the emotion, the element that triggered it, that created this reaction. The initial and final consideration I would like to do is that this is really important. I borrow the concept of viral DNA because it's not only regarding, or not anymore only regarding communication and ideas, but the viral or contagious sharing mechanisms that Jonah introduced to us are starting to regarding adoption of products and services. And therefore they become even more important because it's not anymore about just sharing your campaign, but is adopting your service. And all the things we've seen in this example have the virality or the contagiousness inside of them. So it's not something that you do after you've done your product or service. And the case of Maximo is also another example of this. But you have to start thinking something that can be adopted like this when you think your product, when you think your design, when you think your ideas. And here's some example. You all have seen the World Cup. So one great lever for virality is irony. On Twitter, irony is very fast. I also try to put a little clock saying how fast this got viral. This is 30,000 retweets, but in a few minutes. So irony always works very well. You probably have followed Luis Suarez that has beaten one of our team players during the World Cup. A few minutes after this, so in real time, there's been a lot of this, but this is really smart. Sneakers posted this beaten snack, more satisfying than Italian, and that was the moment to catch. The day after would have been good enough, you know. And another smart example on how you can use irony on yourself is the debut of CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, on Twitter, which said we can neither confirm, non possiamo né confermare né negare che questo sia il nostro primo tweet. No? 45,000 tweets and a very good positioning. We're smart, we make fun of ourselves. WikiLeaks replied, we are looking forward to share classified stories about you because they launched the hashtag unclassified. So it got connected. We also have, maybe you don't know, but we have a very contagious and viral prime minister because Dnsee is viral inside of himself. Whatever he says becomes an hashtag. You all remember Enrico Stai Sereno. that has become a matter of discussion for days. But it's not. He's not thinking about it. They just come out of his mouth like this. Oh, yeah. Really. So.
Is it Trojan horse?
Is it Trojan horse? Maybe. No. He has it inside somehow, which is the communication difference between a politician which doesn't have it, and must make it or fake it, and you feel it, and somebody who has it. And as Jonah showed us, participation or scandals or anger become very, very viral. This is Cheers to Sochi, an hashtag launched by brands that has been hijacked because of anti-gay declarations and anti-gay politics of the host country of Olympics. And this has been hijacked and it's spread out for many times, but it can be really fast and you cannot really control it. Maybe the video, we should click on the video to make it start, I think. PowerPoint. Or greatness is something that we share.
Audio.
Vi consiglio di guardarvelo se riuscite, la famosa spaccata di Van Damme in cima a 2 camion Volvo, no, a proposito dello show don't tell. Quindi lui è in piedi su due specchietti retrovisori di due camion che vanno su un'autostrada e lui dice ho lavorato tutta la vita, ho le gambe, e fa una spaccata con i due camion che vanno a mostrare il dynamic steer, no? To show. Yeah, not even standing here. E quindi l'eccezionalità, no? è un'altra cosa. Ma anche le sinergie dei media. Gangnam Style è figlio del K-pop, che è nipote del J-pop e che è diventato un fenomeno planetario con un... Sorry.
Sorry.
I go back to English. K-pop and Gangnam Style has become a world hit, and this is a good example also of media synergy. So a great product, a great song, smart and listening to trends, but at the same time a great seeding of the content. And identity also is something. This is you all have seen these cans of Coca-Cola and lots of marketing actions. So it's me. You're talking about me. Therefore, it's relevant.
We have the Louis Nutella.
Exactly. We also did it with Nutella. This is also a classic example, and you share it because it regards you somehow. But these products that are or become quickly viral, not only ideas or communication. And then there's another question I would like to ask Jonah. We'll discuss later after this. The iPhone has become a viral product before even it exists. So if you look for the next iPhone, there's already all the world speaking about iPhone 6 and 7, and they're imagining it and somehow. So it's inside the product, the adoption of a new service. You have it in Rome also now, Enjoy. I don't know the numbers of Rome, but I think it started really fast also here. In Milano, it has gotten to 70,000 users in a city of 1 million people in a few days or weeks after another car sharing was already there. And it's not only a new product, it's a new way of moving for you. So it's a new lifestyle you have to adopt somehow. You have to change your habits, leave your car at home, take a car somebody else is use it. Something if you ask Italian people, would use the car somebody else is using it? Yeah, no. Now we're all doing it somehow. So this is not communication. There was no advertising. No advertising for Enjoy. Just from any for Enjoy. Just a product engineered in the right way. So the message we take from Jonah, and we'll discuss this with Michele after. I know he has take-home values. My take-home from what we learn is that this is not only about communication, it's about how we make our products. So they can be viral inside before we make it. The winner taco is another example. For example, that is a product that has been claimed back by the community because they wanted it. And my last consideration, I know it's also a chapter I found in your book, Jonah, is about truth or lies. And it's amazing how lies spread a lot. And more than the true information. And this is something we might discuss later, Michele, if you want, because if they share so fast and so strong, and they cannot be erased because the things on the web are there forever, don't we risk to be submerged by lies because they spread so fast? He has an interesting theory in the book that they get spread because we think they're useful. So don't vaccine your babies because they can become autistic. This is a lie that is, we think it might be useful, so we share it to help, but we're not helping, we are creating a problem. The lonely Syrian baby refugee alone in the desert, that's a lie all the newspapers have told, but it was a picture, just a frame of the picture, and it was 3 meters behind his mother. He was just getting a little bit tired, but a big lie has been built and has been spread because we want to be useful and saying, like, look what's happening, but it was not even happening somehow. And now we have an interesting technique where even a newspaper lie in the title to make you click and look at the article. So they make some scandal or something when nothing is really happening. I have a screenshot of Huffington Post. They made the title "Scopri cos'ha il Papa." No? The other week, the Pope canceled the meeting, so everybody started worrying he was actually sick or tired. So very smart, but your newspaper, you should not tell lies. Huffington Post understood that there was something people was worrying about, so they made a title of the news, "Scopri cos'ha il Papa," discover what's the Pope illness. And the article was nothing. The Pope has nothing. That was the news. But you're actually saying that he has something because you want to click. So lies get viral, and because they get viral, we might be stimulated to tell lies. So that's another point I would like to share. So thank you, and I'll leave the word to Matteo.
Thank you, Marco. And please, Matteo, tell us your experience about social customer and social feedbacks and contagious dynamics.
You hear me? Yes. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Matteo. I'm founder, as Michele introduced me, of Zoorate and actually CEO. Today, what I want to share with you is, first of all, to describe what we are and what we do. Not because we like to discuss about that, because it's very interesting since our whole business is strongly related to word of mouth and digital advertising in terms of virality. So it's interesting to understand how we do it, why we do it, and then I'm going to share some examples which I found in our work, in everyday work, and I believe are strongly related and can be fit very well in the 6 principles that Jonah describes in his book, and that actually are, in my opinion, very interesting to as a glasses to read what we do every day and to give like a shape to our activity and to describe it also to our customers and to our clients. So very quickly, our name is Zoorate. The mission, Voice to the Customer, describes very well what we do. We have a mission to habilitate customers and online shoppers, especially in e-commerce, that's why we work, to share their stories and their opinions, their comments. So after they purchase online, they have the willingness to share what they did, how they did it, and why they're happy about it. So this is mainly what we do. And on the other side, of course, this information we collect is very powerful, and we give it to brands and the retailers to use it to achieve great value from this content. So actually, we create a very strong bridge between customers and brands so they can interact quickly and effectively and create value one for each other. So three quick say, pills. First of all, we work in social commerce, so that's our main focus. And as I said, we enable brands and retailers to collect ratings, reviews, comments, and opinions. And on the other hand, we collect this data and we give it to brands, so they actually can turn this information into value. How they do it, I'm going to share through the examples. But the very important thing is that the value they can drive from this kind of activity is very high and very powerful in their campaigns. We are content license partners of Google, but this is not just to show our recognition, but it's important because it gives the idea of how much big players like Google, big stakeholders in digital and e-commerce, give value, how much they give value to this kind of activity, which can be a very niche activity, but widely adopted, especially in the US, in big markets, and bring real value to brands using it. Third of all, we have been working on a very important partnership with the Italian E-commerce Association, and we are working as the technology providers for their trust mark. It's an Italian trust mark for e-commerce to actually show which websites are valuable, trustable, and which are not. Also, this is not a recognition, but it's important because we believe that the content we collect and we give to brands is important because the content itself has value inside. But also, the trustability and reliability we can give to the content is helpful to create a strong engagement and to, let's say, overtake the barriers of, let's say, low trustability that, especially in the Italian market, are still working and heavily affecting e-commerce. So just to give a brief examples, because someone asked me, but small shops especially very often ask me, but this kind of activity is not interesting for me because it's interesting for big volumes, big brands, and big companies. What I say is not true because A customer, should it be someone buying from a big e-commerce, a very well-known e-commerce like Amazon, like eBay, or big names, is exactly behaving the same way to small shops. So this kind of content, the willingness of the customer sharing his content is the same, is very powerful, both for big shops, small shops, and is very powerful both for either brands selling their products online, let's say shoes, let's say fashion apparel, or even retailers, let's say selling products like equipment, like sportswear or others brands online. So it's bothly important for either one side and the other. Okay, just a quick dip on how it works to give an overview, and then we'll step into the examples. We have created, to do this kind of job, a strong platform. It is cloud-based, and what we do is actually we interact with shops, we integrate with them, and we manage all the process of, let's say, finding, soliciting, collecting, monitoring, analyzing, and then giving some sort of value to the expression of customers after purchase. So once you plug in the technology, you just, let's say, sit back and see that what happens is that customers love to share their information, love to share their experiences, and we give also the tools to value this kind of activity by putting them in the best place, in the best contact spots where other customers can find them, and where this kind of, let's say, interactions, customer to customer, word of mouth interactions can happen and can actually engage into value for brands. So when we describe our activity to someone who doesn't understand actually our job, we always start from two questions. The first is, what are your customers thinking in this moment? Because many brands we work with, they don't actually know what they're thinking. We were talking with Michele and Jonah yesterday at dinner. I was saying most of the brands don't want to hear what the customer think about them. So it's very dangerous because they think they're okay, they think their work is fine. They don't understand what they're talking about because some of the customers may be happy, some may be sad, some may be angry. So knowing is the first step of interacting and then doing something and taking action. So what are you going to do about it is the second question. So once you understood that your customers are happy, unhappy, they like the way you work, they don't like the way you work, the next step is to do something about it and create real value, either working on negative sides or working on positive sides to give the right visibility, of course, to what they say. And this is the first step of how we work with our activity and with our everyday work. And there's three evidence that answer these kind of questions when you ask why we do this and what's the information that you can create from it. First of all, of course, we understood and we see it every day that 3 out of 4 of customer purchase decisions are taken very often on the shop online. So when you see people going around on the web, on comparison sites, on let's say on Google, on comparators, on social networks, on mobile, what happens is that you think that that's where their purchase intent is created. But it's not very true because the spot where we see that the most powerful influence is taken is on the store online. So the moment just before clicking on the add to cart, that's where the decision is taken. So that's where you have to put information which helps their purchase decision. Second of all, we see in Italy, which is interesting because some data may be, let's say, not very, say, shareable because Italy is seen as a smaller country, as a slower country compared to US. But in Italy, 1 out of 2 customers like to comment the product online after purchasing. So every time that someone buys online from, let's say, your e-shop, sometimes, 1 out of 2 times, they go somewhere and somewhere they put their comment, either positive, negative. Maybe they put a like, maybe they say they like you, maybe they say they don't like you, but they do it. And knowing where they do it and actually doing something about it is our job and what we like to do and what we like to share as a very important value with our customers. Third of all is how much they read it. So we see that 60% of customers before purchasing, they like to go and see what they think. I believe that everyone knows TripAdvisor or those kind of platforms. Before taking a journey, before choosing a hotel, before choosing a restaurant, what you usually do, you go online, you click the name of the hotel, and you find out whether people like it or don't like it. And very often, you take a decision based not only on the pictures and the technical details that they give you, but also based on what other people think about. So you're very, very strongly influenced in terms of the willingness to buy the product, to buy it from that shopper, and whether to do it or not. So this is very interesting. It's a basis of everyday job. So besides impacting, let's say, on metrics, which is not very interesting today, it's interesting because this kind of activity can also help brands to achieve important results in terms of reputation, in terms of knowing what their customers want, and in the end, and we'll see it with the research we're working with Luis, understanding what kind of actions, what kind of alerts and signals you can take from this kind of information, both to react to this kind of behavior from customers and to improve your business, improve your products, improve your service with a, let's say, real-time marketing intelligence tool that you can use with your customers. So just to give some data that can give some shape to the activities, to the examples I'm going to share, we are working with more than 50,000 customer feedbacks in the last few months. We see that the customers we work with, the final customers, like to interact because more than 12-13% of the customers we solicitate to give reviews, they like to leave reviews. And the satisfaction rate is very high. And this is a very interesting figure. I would like also, Jonah, if you have some comments about it, because what we see is that if you leave people submit reviews and tell their stories without, let's say, asking them about it, the satisfaction rate is very low because you don't actually get the moment, you don't hit the momentum of the emotion where actually you bought a product and you want to share your story about it. So going proactive is very important also. We believe it's very important also, and this is the result that we see in being proactive. So the first example I would like to share is about what is called social value or social currency. This example is very generic. It can be applied to every product review you can find online for whatever product you want. And what we see is that, what I believe is that social currency is a very strong trigger of actually leaving a review. Besides being altruist and informing someone else of what you did and what you bought, what I believe is that if you buy something that you really like, the first thing you like to do is to tell someone else. So I bought some shoes recently, and I like to tell my friends what shoes I bought. In this case, the example is very powerful because the product this guy bought is for a present for someone he loves. So the, let's say the social currency, I believe, is even more powerful in this case. Recently, I bought the bracelet. It was called the Up bracelet, you know, the one that can collect your steps and understand actually if you're sleeping well or sleeping bad. At the beginning, I was very, very excited, so I started tweeting and putting the information on my social network. After a few months, I changed my mind because I actually got bored about it. Okay, after knowing that I do like 5,000 steps every day, what can I do about it? So when other people were buying the same bracelet online, I started commenting negatively on their sharing to say, okay, I bought it. It's bullshit because I don't really understand how you can use it in the long run. So it's very powerful. I tried myself, and I see it in everyday example of product reviews that we collect. The second example, I tried to, let's say, fit it in what is called emotion in your framework. In this case, I selected a very powerful customer review, which a customer of one of our partners, it's a very small shop, has left recently, it's 10th of June, about his experience. It's interesting because if you read it, you see not only that he's happy and he's excited, but also that he was looking forward recently of finding a place where he could comment on this journey and to tell others. So actually not having the space to tell this kind of content was a limit to himself. And in this case, what is described as emotion is interesting because not only he was satisfied, but the surprise that he was, let's say, the surprise that he found by having the product shipped to his home correctly, on time, let's say, without breaking some parts of the products, etc., was so high arousal for him that immediately, as soon as we asked him to leave a review, he left a review very positive. So it works for electronics, it works for shoes, for fashion apparel, for whatever. But what we see is this, that emotion, not only in terms of having a strong emotion in what we bought, but also in finding useful and being surprised, and in Italy that happens very often, of that if you buy on e-commerce, you actually receive the product, you're happy about it, and you say, wow, I received it in time. This is one of a very strong trigger that we see every day in collecting reviews. The third example I want to share, I believe it fits very much in what is described as public. So the fact that people like to see what others do and imitate them and do it their own. This is one of our very normal pages that we use to collect the number of ratings and reviews for merchants and the sellers online. And what I see and what I believe is that the number of customer feedbacks you find online affects very much the way that you interact with the shop. Not only because you find a lot of reviews and then you buy online, but also because if you find reviews after you purchased, you're very much more affected to contribute yourself because actually someone else did. So you like to imitate and emulate this kind of activity. And often, even more, you can be affected not only by leaving a review, but also by leaving it in the same direction, in the same intensity, so positive, negatively, or even in the length of the comment you leave, if you see others have done the same. So if you see your friends that went to an hotel and they left a review or maybe commented and shared their experience with friends, you very much like to interact with them and, let's say, do the same thing just because your friends do the same. So I believe this is a very strong and powerful tool if brands on the other side see the value of this kind of activity and they can use it to drive value, to drive performance, and to actually not leave it on the table, but use it to create some value for themselves. The last thing is not an example, but it's actually a challenge I want to share, and it's interesting to discuss also with Jonah and see how he thinks about it. What we're doing is that we've taken some questions. For example, what can we learn from contagiousness experiences in social commerce, and how strong is it, and how can we find patterns that can describe it and make it predictable? So actually to learn before what to do and not after what we see. So we're cooperating with Luis and some of the professors with Michele, and we are studying all the contents that we are collecting and understanding if we can find different product categories, different language styles, different satisfaction levels that somehow can influence some sort of, let's say, intensity, some sort of direction also in the comments. And our final mission is to create a system, an alerting model that can actually help brands to say, okay, this is happening right now in your database, with your customers, with your asset, which are your customers. What are you going to do about it, and how can you use this information before actually, passively waiting for the actions to take place, but proactively doing something to create value and to actually turn the information into actions and to increase, of course, performances and sales. That's it. If you have any questions.
Now the idea is to have some questions from you, and so we can close the conference just answering with your question and giving us our idea. So. Questions? Yes, Alessandro.
Hi, thank you very much. Just a question for Jonah. Did you read the report by the New York Times about their viralization fault?
Sorry,
The New York Times has published a report about the viralization that they used over these last years. And they talked about a fault that they had in this viralization business. Did you read it?
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
One thing that's interesting, it's not an easy business to be in now. The Times and many other places are trying to figure out how do we create content that gets attention while also not losing our core mission. So for example, if you look at the content that gets highly shared, world news is not content that gets highly shared. Does that mean that they should stop reporting on world news? Probably not. That's part of the mission of the paper. But I think they're really struggling to think about how to bring digital in-house without ruining some of their core values. It's interesting, we started working with their data probably around 2007, 2008. We tried to work with them directly, They said we don't have the data organized, so we actually scraped it. We built a web crawler to scrape the data from the site. And they're happy with our results. They're happy with the paper. But I've had many journalists contact me saying, my article made the most emailed list. Can you tell me how much attention it got? And I said, well, you're at the paper. Shouldn't you be able to ask your colleague in digital? And I think they very much have a strong divide between the analytics folks and the journalists, people creating the content and the people analyzing the content. So I think if you look, and I don't know if there are companies like this here, but in the US, companies like BuzzFeed, for example, a number of companies have been born on the web. Rather than being traditional media companies that are moving, they're born understanding what makes people share things, and they're trying to move to a broad range of content, both fun and engaging content, but also more weighty and heavy content. And so I think it's very much a challenge for these traditional media outlets to think about how to compete in this new digital sort of space where should I charge for content? Should I not charge for content? If I charge, it keeps people out, makes it harder to share things. But if I don't charge, well then, does anyone buy the regular newspaper anymore, and do we just lose all our revenue? So thinking about new business models and how to structure the revenue there, I think is very
Yes. Is there some sort of analogy with the tipping point reasoning? Is there, more precisely, there's some sort of threshold beyond which it works better or it works at all?
This for me?
Yes.
So by the way, The Tipping Point is a great book. The Tipping Point is actually one of the reasons I got started in this area of research. Great book, very interesting read. Yes, yeah, but I think what people forget about Gladwell is he's a journalist. He's not a scientist. And about half that book is wrong. And the problem as a non-academic is you don't necessarily know which half. And so part of our job is to actually tease out what's right there and what's incorrect. I think where the notion of a tipping point is useful in thinking about word of mouth, not every dose of word of mouth leads you to do something. So let's say I hear about a newspaper article. I click on the link. Maybe one dose is enough. But for buying a more complicated purchase, like a car, for example, or a house, you may need to hear about it multiple times from multiple people before you actually get above a threshold to adopt. And so people talk about waterfall versus sprinkler marketing. Sprinkler is more you spread resources out throughout the network. That works very well if people only need one dose of hearing about it before they adopt. But in some cases, you need multiple doses. The more expensive something is, the more risky something is, the more uncertain you are about whether it will work, the more you need to hear from multiple people before you adopt. And if that's the case, you really need more of a waterfall strategy where you concentrate your resources in one area of the network. Because hearing about it may not be enough to drive adoption. And so I think the notion, and really what Granovetter is talking about, and by the way, for anyone who likes these sort of ideas, there's an old book called Micromotives and Macro Behaviors, which was written by a guy, Thomas Schelling. Schelling won the Nobel Prize for some of his work on focal points, but it's really a great old book about how micromotives at the individual level lead to collective outcomes, like things becoming popular. And I think, and I know some of our colleagues from sociology are in the room, I think really understanding these social epidemics requires understanding both the psychology and the sociology. Understanding the why people do things, but also, as you nicely pointed out, how does information diffuse within a social network? How does that influence whether something catches on or not? Understanding both aspects, combining them are
Okay.
then everybody wants to get the question.
After the ice break, then there is the fall. One question for Jonah. In your presentation, you said that out of the total amount of spreading the information, 7% was coming out of the web.
Yes.
And yet, most of your examples were really web-related. So if you have any example, especially for mass product outside of the web?
Yeah, so if you take a look at the book, every time I give a talk, someone says, but your examples are this. They're too consumer, they're too online. I try to use both examples online as well as offline. One thing that is true, and I think one of the real benefits of what a company like Matteo does, is online is easier to measure. than offline is to measure. So you can see an impact on sales, both online or offline, but it's much easier to measure word of mouth online to know how many people are talking about something, looking at the volume of mentions, for example. Google has that great feature. You can type in Rebecca Black or your brand and look at the volume of searches over time. It's hard to do that for offline word of mouth. Not impossible. And so we've worked with a company called the Keller-Fay Group that has diary studies of thousands upon hundreds of thousands of consumers a year. We've worked with other companies that run offline word of mouth campaigns. We have all their data. So we've looked at some of those things, but offline is definitely harder to measure. That said, it's no less impactful. And I don't mean to suggest that online isn't important. I think what's important is to think about not just what is everyone else doing and what is the shiny new toy, but really understanding that underlying consumer behavior. Saying, what business am I in? Where are people going to talk about my business? Where are the sales happening for my business? Because, for example, if sales for your business are happening all online, if 90% of your sales are online, then online is going to be more important for you than it would be for a business that sells canned tomatoes at the grocery store, because you can't buy those online, so you really need that offline word of mouth. If your business is mostly online, online can be much more important. And so I just put that number up to be a little provocative to say, don't just do online because it's new. Think about where people are purchasing, why people are purchasing, underlying that underlying human behavior, and once you understand that, you'll be much better off.
One question for Jonah. I'm very interesting to know if we can kindle the fire during a sales conversation, because it's very important for networking, for social network, or for web. But actually, there are a lot of companies that sell a lot on shop and in a relationship face to face, and so. We're investing a lot on sales conversation to explain the unique selling proposition. For example, Win, like said before, Maximo about real minutes, or Win best price, or another unique selling proposition of Win, with starting from a marketing story to tell a story of sales. And so I'm interested to know if during a sales conversation we can apply the 6 steps.
I think everything, whether it's a sales conversation, whether it's the website, whether it's a customer service call, or even it's the designing the product itself, each of those is an opportunity to have a conversation. Each of those is an opportunity to get someone to talk about your brand. I was recently at a conference where there was a water bottle, but it wasn't a bottle, it was in a carton. I'd never seen water in a carton before. It was an interesting designed product. It made people more likely to talk about it. So I think sales conversations are certainly a great opportunity to generate to word of mouth. What I really liked about what Maximo said, though, is trying to think about that not as a sales conversation, but as a conversation. Because I think just like consumers know that ads are trying to sell them something, they know that a salesperson is trying to sell them something. And so I think the more authentic that experience can seem, the more interested in the consumer rather than salesy that conversation can seem, the more likely that person is going to resonate with that conversation. I was just talking to, there's a company in the United States called Zappos, which is basically the biggest online, one of the largest online companies that sell things. They sell clothes, they started with shoes. And they said when we started, we spent no money on advertising. We used all that money for customer service. So when a customer called, rather than saying, let's get them off the phone as quickly as possible, we said, we want them to be as happy as possible when they get off that call. So you can call Zappos and say, hi, I'm in this city. I can't find a pizza restaurant. Do you know of one? And the Zappos doesn't sell pizza, but the Zappos representative will find a pizza restaurant for you. You can call and say, hey, I have a problem with my shoes. I actually recently ordered some shoes. The dog, apparently, my dog loves boxes. I did not know this, but tore the cardboard to shreds. There are no more box to send the shoes back in. They will take a return, but I said, I don't have the box anymore. They said, send us back in a plastic bag. Now that costs them some money, but they know that I will be so satisfied, right? I just told a room of 300 people about this because it's an amazing customer service experience. And so I think sales is a great opportunity to have a conversation, but think about how to use that conversation effectively. And I think the hardest thing to do as an individual working for a company is to see it from the consumer's perspective. And again, that's why I think it's so interesting to look outside, as Matteo is saying, from the outsider's perspective. It's very easy to assume that every consumer loves that experience, but think about what it's like for you with someone else's company, how you find that experience, how to make that as authentic and real as possible.
Hi, I'm from Unilever. One question, because I agree with you that word of mouth is a technique as a marketing overall, because also marketing is a technique. But in your presentation, didn't found the importance of the creativity. That sometimes is crucial, because at the end of the day, we can stay here understanding the deep inside of our consumers, but unfortunately, we don't have the right message to deliver, right? So I would like to understand a little bit this point that for me was missing.
Yes, that's a very astute comment. And I think there's a problem with science, and there's also a problem with creativity. There's a problem with both. Each of them by themselves is not enough. So I talked about the 6 steps, and each of those are key scientific principles. But if you don't think about how to use them in your context, you don't think about how to creatively use them, it doesn't matter. And the same thing with creativity. Whenever I teach this framework in my course, and I have the students apply it to companies. They always come up with something very clever, and then they stuff the principles in at the end. They say, we have to, this sort of relates to this principle. They're so focused on being creative and clever that they don't think about the science. They think about the creativity, and they think about the science too late. It's important to do both. It's important for the science to be right, understanding the consumer behavior, but then using that creativity to figure out how to demonstrate it, how to apply it. So I think both are very important. Either one without the other is not enough.
Thank you.
Just want to say something to Maximo. Actually, it's not a question, it's just compliments, because my family experienced this Minuto Vero campaign, and my sons and my wife immediately converted to Vero to win. Fantastic experience. Word of mouth between friends. And also the customer experience at the shops was great. So I can confirm. I'm not a testimonial. I work for an airline. By the way, we don't lose so many baggages, Jonas. I'll tell you which airline it is later. It's Cathay Pacific. We don't lose many baggages. But it was a fantastic experience. So I think that it was very, very, very efficient, a very strong campaign. My compliments.
Thank you. A question for Jonah. First of all, congratulations for your speech. It was amazing. We have been in contact for a while, so I met you at conferences. I know you are great. I already read your papers, your book, everything. But the way you presented was just amazing to me, and I think to many in this room. That said, Jonah, in your model, your 6 steps. Of course, you combined. What is the scientific knowledge with this very nice model. In each step, I noticed that there is the individual, the communicator, put at the center, right? Is there any chance, or in other words, how would you contemplate the possibility that people share word of mouth for the mere motive of helping others, right? Rather than taking, let me say, a more selfish perspective. This is a more academic question, I'm aware of that. So I'm out of the box a little bit.
Nobody's perfect, Matteo, don't worry.
No, so I apologize for asking this question in this context. But I'm just curious about it. I'm doing some research looking at this aspect, and I just wanted to know your opinion about it. Thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for the very nice compliments. And for those who don't know Matteo, he's done a bunch of great work in this area on social currency and other things. So this work is very much building on your work. I think I have 2 answers to your question. One, your question is is sharing about the self, for me, I want to look good to others, or sharing about the recipient, I want to help others. I would say that practical value at its core is about altruism, is about I want to share useful things to others to make them better off. So, why do we share discounts, for example? Or why did you talk about Minuto Vero? Maybe because you wanted to look good, but maybe because it was such a great experience that you want to help other people as well. That said, I think it's very hard to tease apart those two motives. This, I think, is one thing that's the boundary between academics and practical use for practitioners. Does that boundary matter? And can you tell whether or not one was happening versus the other? So, because you may be sharing something to help others because it makes you look good. And so those motives in some way are very intertwined. So I think they're hard to tease apart. That said, I think it is interesting to think about how much sharing is about the sharer versus the receiver. I think we have a model that it's very much about the receiver. I say something to you based on your interests. I'm not so sure that model is right. I think sharing content is a little bit like gift giving. Very hard to give someone a gift that you yourself don't like. It's very hard to pick something out for someone if you find it ugly. Even if they say they want it, it's very hard for you to get it. And so I think there is this tension between the sender and the receiver. Very, very astute question.
Hello, I have a question from Twitter. May I? So Vanessa asks, we have seen all fun examples, very powerful. And how about serious stuff? How harder is to get viral? It's the same? I think she something like social messages or difficult, not so funny, or just to sell something. No, is to communicate a different message for people.
I think the question was, how do you get important social causes to be spread? Is that more serious messages to be spread? Is that the question?
I think yes. I just
okay. Okay. So I think again, some of the examples
without practical value.
Yes, I think some of the examples we saw here, though. I mean, so Marco talked about the example with Cheers to Sochi. Right, it was a nice example of more of a cause, about some of the issues they were having with, the political views of some individuals in Russia, and that was a cause that got attention for the same reason. I'm actually doing a big project right now with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation around messaging, around development, using these exact same principles. I think the interesting thing about the psychology is it's not focused on just one type of thing, not one type of product, not one type of service, not one type of message. The psychology, why we share funny things, is the same when we talk at work, when we talk at home, when we talk at other places. We're the same people. And so I think we don't turn into a different mode. Sometimes it is a little harder if the message is serious, but I don't think it's impossible. I think the Cheers to Sochi as well as the Minuto Vero are great examples of more serious topics that got a good bit of attention by understanding why.
And if I might add, very often, especially here in Italy, we have been told, and we generated the conviction that viral is something you build, it's quick, it doesn't cost, and there you go. I can make a viral videos for you. So it's one of the rarest and most difficult things. Of course, they produce the blind tech video with $50, but the idea comes probably after years of knowing your product and knowing your market and listening to it, and then you get to that moment. So it's quite complicated. A whole marketing strategy might be engineered on listening to consumers and to building your product and all your communication in a certain way. So
it's usual a lot of transpiration together with inspiration. Yes, and then Paolo.
My name is Piero Dagri. I work as a marketer, specifically to the target of seniors, 65 plus, which is a huge target because it represents almost 25% of our population, Italian population, and is also growing. So I was very well impressed by the presentation. So the question is for Jonas, but could be extended to the other speaker. The question is, I hope it is not an appropriate question, how do you see your model working for specifically to senior target? If they apply or must be different or it doesn't apply at all? Thanks.
Paolo, is that
Yeah, it was exactly the comment that I had. I mean, I'm not a marketing researcher. I'm a scholar in the strategy field, but I'm dealing a lot with social networks. And you all are familiar with, probably with, the 6 degrees of separation theory, I assume. Well, this experiment, that was fun, was quite interesting that the theory was created in the late 50s with an experiment with a real traditional mail. So they exchanged letters and they counted the degrees of separations, the number of steps towards reach different points in a region. Well, more recently, the same experiment has been done with Microsoft Messenger, so on technology-based communicator. And the number, the degrees of separation is 6.6. So the reality is the sociological factors are the same. Whether or not you are using technologies, sociological factors are the same, such psychological factors are the same either, probably. So the message that I took from his presentation and the others, well, we can use technologies in the best way, but at the end of the story, you need to work on sociological and psychological factors, and you need to build on those factors in order to profit from those technologies.
I couldn't agree more. That was a great point. And I think the only thing I would add, and it was to your comment earlier about creativity as well, the psychology is the same, but understanding how to apply it is different. So think about social currency, for example. What gives a 22-year-old girl social currency is not the same thing that gives a 75-year-old man social currency, right? The girl cares a lot about fashion, maybe, and celebrities and university. The 75-year-old man cares more maybe about his family, his grandkids. We still care about looking good to others, but how we do it is different. And so thinking about how to the creativity point, about how to apply this science to the different markets, is you have to, and it's nicely said also, you have to understand your consumers and apply that science to that particular consumer base.
Question for Jonah. You made 2 examples of 2 brands. Well, right. Now what I think is that the 2 brands are different. Have the same formula for all the brands, or do you think that brands are specific and may have specific field of application for your categories? For example, I see that Walt Disney is very good for stories, while Cheerios is good for triggers, more adapted for triggers. One or the other?
I think it's easy to do what you're good at. So what's easy is to say, I sell pet food. Let's use pets. They're happy, they're emotional, they will care a lot. What's harder to do is do the things you're less good at. It's harder to pick of those 6 if you're Gucci, it's easy to do social currency. It might be harder to do triggers, for example. And I find the biggest benefits you see, like that blender I think is a great example, where a company picks something they would be not as good at, and they try to improve on that. Right? I think of those things you would say, blender, easy practical value, hard to make a blender look cool and remarkable. Yet they did that, and that's why it's gotten so much attention. It exceeded the expectations. So I would think, as your colleagues think about how to apply these ideas, don't just go to the ones you're good at already. Focus on the ones, and when I work with companies, I help them work on the ones they're less good at, because I think that's really where a lot of the returns come, and where a lot of their competitors may not be exploiting those opportunities.
Thank you very much. And now I would ask to Jonah to do quickly comments on the presentation, and then I would like to show you just 2 slides before an aperitif or lunch or whatever. So please, Jonah.
So first of all, thanks to everyone for having me, for everyone for putting together this wonderful event, and also for the colleagues on the panel. I think we saw a lot of interesting and diverse approaches here to this exciting area. Just almost working backwards, I think to Matteo's talk, what I was really struck by is the combination of old and new. In that it's very easy, and much of what his exciting company is doing is new. It's thinking about word of mouth online, because that is where people now go to do some of their shopping. That said, relying on others for information about what we should buy is not new. That's old. That happens offline as well. But this is the new way that we do that. And so thinking about the power of word of mouth, not just as an influence tool, how do we influence others, but also as a research tool, how do we understand others and what they think about us, I think is one of the really powerful things that your company is doing. To Marco's talk, there were so many good things there, and I thought the speed and being relevant to the time that's happening is very important. But I really liked your comment about lies spreading. And there's some great quote that I don't remember correctly, but it's something along the lines of lies have spread, lies have like a 2-mile head start by the time the truth even gets its boots on. Something like that. But I think what's important to remember is it's not random or luck why lies spread. If you think about the lies that end up spreading, it's many of the principles that we've talked about here. Often it's emotion, right? High, strong emotion. People are angry, people are anxious. I actually started out by studying rumors, and a lot of why rumors spread are those reasons. And so I think when we want to think about how to engineer the truth to be effective, we need to understand why the lies are working, distill those principles, and use them. And I think what's also very important here is it's easy as a company to say, people are going to tell things about us that are not true. We shouldn't do word of mouth. I'm just going to close my ears and put my head in the sand like an ostrich. It's easy to do that. It's much harder to actually listen, use some of these technologies to listen to what consumers are saying, to figure out how to dip your toe into that area effectively. And I think it's very key. Just because you're not listening doesn't mean it's not happening. And then finally, to Maximo's very nice talk about wind, I think I couldn't have thought of a better example to illustrate the idea of showing rather than telling. Because it's really easy to tell your customers how much you care about service. It's really easy to tell your customers and claim that you care about customers, that you care about transparency. Anyone can say that. It's much harder to do that. And it's much harder to put together a campaign and initiative that shows that. And so I think that's a good take-home challenge for each of you, is to not just talk the talk, but to walk the walk. To figure out how not just to come up with buzzwords that sound really good, but to actually put together products and initiatives that actually show that value that you care about. Right? Figure out how can we show people, because anyone can tell them. Any competitor could have said, we care about consumers, we're really transparent. But I think they were so effective because they figured out how to show consumers that. And that authenticity is really valued. At the end of the day, when brands stop acting just like companies and they start acting like people, like colleagues, like friends, that's really where the trust happens. So I think all three of them were great talks, and I think we should give them a hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonah. And very quickly, you see these slides is, a little bit too didascalic. We hope you get some ideas. In the new perspective, that is not only the digital perspective, is enabled by digital networks, digital media, is a social side economics perspective. And not to be rhetoric, but the challenge is yours. And the challenge is that is not something that could take away from us the responsibility to work with you. And this responsibility is fully taken, and I would like to do an example, to give you an example on that. And the example is that contagious and social side economics can be managed or passively taken, and sometimes even the worst the worst contagious dynamics can be managed and turned into positive business development options. This is a very interesting example that I got a few days ago by some of the entrepreneurs working in the digital music business from Sunday. And they told me about this story. Iron Maiden was analyzing the contagious dynamics in order to understand where they were losing more money because of piracy. And they got a clear picture on a map of a Brazilian area where a lot of pirates were operating, and the piracy was contagious. Everybody was exchanging music and downloading music without paying anything. So what they did is they organized the most important live tour in that area, just getting 2.5 million revenues just from the tour, and 3 million more fans on their community. and they are still cross-selling services, products, and brands, and music on this community. So that's the idea. And the idea is that the contagious dynamics are phenomena that deserve a trading gap in the managerial perspective. They have to become more strategic. In the CEO room, and I really appreciate Maximo because he finds the time to work on this kind of topic, in the CEO room, you have to discuss this kind of topic. Because really, big opportunities can come from this analysis together with big data, like in the Iron Maiden case. You have to analyze and use big data predictions in order to understand trends, and adapting this perspective, you can, just thrive on contagious dynamics or provoke them, not spending too much money, but just to learn how to manage the future, a future that is made by emerging, and who knows, the next emerging markets. So, thank you very much for being here for 2 hours and a half. Guinness single session, 2 hours and 40 minutes, and thank you to Jonah to be so sparkling. Thank you.